Hi, and welcome to the Drishtikon show. We have been away for quite some time, but we are back again. We wanted to discuss about the whole Canadian-Indian relationship and what's going on between the two nations. There's a lot of fireworks which have been happening, so I think it's time we caught up with it. And we have Mr. Ankush Bhandari as usual, our geopolitics expert. And what we'll do is we will actually put everything into context, the history, the background, the society, the people, and how the
Yes.
two societies have been shaped. So welcome, Mr. Bhandari, Ankushji. So let's go over the history first and how the Sikhs and like went there, and also how Canada as a society has shaped over the years. So can you take us through that?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Deshi, again for inviting me to your channel. So that's a very burning topic, the Indian and Canada relationship, which has been to the roller coaster, just like America, right? But nowadays, as you've seen, especially after G20 and during G20 and after Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau remarks on the killing of the Sikh terrorists, it has really shaped the Indian relation with Canada to a new scenario. It has been the lowest ever, I think, in during my times. I have seen closely watching this Canada and India relationship since 1990s. I think it has turned to the lowest level. But as you mentioned, that we need to understand because without history we can't make our future. So I would love to share a few points over here for the Sikhs history in Canada and how Canada has always been a racist country and how they have always called Canada as a white Canada.
Hmm.
So this information I'm sharing you is from the Asian Heritage Society of the New Brunswick. So where there I get all this information. So it says that the first South Asians to arrive in Canada was the Indian men of Sikh faith, and they came in 1897.
Hmm.
So before this century or before now the 21st century, in the 19th century, they first came. And how did they came? They were a part of the British Dominion because the Britishers were India was a part of British Empire. So they bring these these Sikh gentlemen, the 5 6 gentlemen, to Canada because there was a Sikh military regiment which was traveling to British Columbia on the way to Queen's Victoria Diamond Jubilee celebration that year in London. Okay. And they would just land here, they spend couple of days and then they move to London. But in 1902, a second group of Sikh soldiers came on the way to Edward's seventh coronation. They made an appearance before a crowd in Vancouver, and the Vancouver Daily Province reads, Durban men excites interest. Awe-inspiring men from India held the crowds. And that's how the first time the appearance of the Sikh community or the Durban community headlines the Vancouver Daily newspaper. So if you go a little further, there have been always an anti-Asian sentiments in Canada. There was a poem which was always read out. I want to read some excerpts from there. We welcome as brothers all white men still, but the shitty yellow race, whose word is vain, who oppress the weak, must find another place. Now
Very.
listen to the second paragraph. It's very, very interesting. Then let us stand united and show our father's might, that won the whom we call our own. For the white man's land we fight. I repeat, for the white man land we fight, to Oriental grasp and agreed and greed. We will surrender, no never. Our watchword be God save the King, white Canada forever. You hear that? God
Hmm.
save the King,
Mm-hmm.
white Canada forever. So it's not new that this is in their blood. The racism is in their blood, and the blood comes from generation to generation. It's genetic, right? And it's come from generation to generation. Then moving a little forward, when the Sikhs were the labor class in British Columbia, that's also very interesting. One of the uh, wife of the plant engineer where Sikh gentlemen used to work as a workers in 1906 because 46 gentlemen arrived in a very tiny region of Vancouver Island to work for a Portland cement industry. So
Mm.
there, Mrs. Parcel, who is the wife of the plant engineer, Mr. Parcel, said in the evening they used to gather in the field at the back of my house
Mm.
and sing very sad and mournful songs. Did you
Mm.
understand what their mental level is, or what their view towards the Sikh community is?
Right.
Then not only that, these were the Sikh people who suffer most of the diseases. It's written that fatal diseases such as typhus fever and tuberculosis were very common on this plant, leading to many, many deaths. And it was said that out of 40, nearly half died because of the inhospitable conditions in the plant condition in the plant. But they never pay any attention. Now, just coming to the later what I said, and I will finish the history. And if you have any
Mm.
question, we can go further.
Right.
The Victoria Trade and Labour Council claimed that Indian workers, I quote now, will be the means of excluding the very class of labor that is most essential for the progress and the prosperity of our country. And who is this class? The white worker.
Mm.
The Delhi province in October of 1960, these Hindus
Mm.
and Sikhs are
Mm.
all old soldiers. I would have white laborers, of course, if I can get them. But I would rather give employment to these old shitty soldiers who have helped to fight for the British Empire than to enter aliens. That was the headlines in the Delhi province in October of 1906. And it
Wow.
didn't stop here. Let me end up with a very few, words from in 1908 by William Lyon Mackenzie King.
Mm.
Okay, he was in the Canadian government. What
Mm.
he said, it was very clearly recognized in regard to emigration, not immigration. Immigration is IMI. It says EMI. Okay, so in regard to the immigration from India to Canada, that the natives of India is not a person suited to this country,
Mm.
not person suited to this country, that accustomed as many of them are to the condition of a tropical hot climate and possessing manners and custom so unlikely of our people.
Mm.
They have inability to adapt themselves to the surrounding entirely different, could not otherwise entail an amount of privatization and suffering with a render to this continent of such emigration, and which will be the interest of Canada itself.
Wow.
So that's how they were. Not only this, J.B. Harvin, he was one of the, I think, uh, maybe a congressman or something in a government official.
Mm.
He has also, yeah, he was secretary to the Minister of Interior
Mm.
in Canada, and he said alternative to the necessity of the wholesale deportation to India and a measure of opportunity in a country climatically better suited to them, in which they would be able to compete more successfully with other labors than in British Columbia.
Mm.
Okay, so they always see them, they have this ideology, they have this mentality, they have this thought process that, oh, these are the labor class, we are doing something better to them, but yes, this is white Canada.
Right.
And don't you think that this has been passed from generation to generations? And we have seen in 1950s how to can forget the Canadian government itself so that there were millions and millions of kids who were graves which were found in Canada, right? Because they didn't accept it to become to their missionaries language, right? They didn't accept
Yeah.
in missionary language, and they were killed. They were small babies, right from 2 month old to 10-year old kid.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was like trying to say that. See, the thing is, like we often look at Canada as a very benign kind of country and society. Like it
That's
was
what they
not.
have made the image outside the
Right.
Canada, but the reality is entirely different, you know?
Right. So those Canadian Indian residential schools were boarding schools which were created by the Department of Indian Affairs and basically administered by the Christian churches and the residential school program. Like what they were doing was they would take the indigenous, the native Canadian Indian or the Indian, like people there and their kids, they would take them out of their families. They would put them in the schools with the aim of converting them, one, and second, uh, like making them assimilated into the Canadian, society itself. But what ended up happening was that when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission actually did
Yes.
research, they actually identified 3,200 deaths. But they did say that there were many deaths which went unreported. So,
Yeah.
according to them, the estimates were around 6,000. Those were the estimates that they were having of the
And you
people, of
always
the
know the
kids who
estimates are always 10% of the
yeah.
West. What
So the
happened, they
kids
only
who
give
were
10%.
right, the kids who were actually buried, what
Yes.
was happening there in
Nobody
those
knows.
schools was extremely sad. So, so Canada as a society has been very much, colonial in its mindset and also very like racist in its entire functioning, with the government. These schools, by the way, kept on functioning till as late as 1997. That
Yes.
was the year when I came to the US. Even at that time, Canada was actually administering these schools where the kids were being uh, like converted,
Tortured.
tortured, and then killed. This was happening in our generation, for God's sake.
Right. Right.
And so I think this entire halo that goes around Canada as a society, that it is very benign, very nice, very free, open, freedom of speech, and all that crap, I think should
This
be
is
put aside.
this is just in the books,
Yeah,
not in the real sense.
right. So this should be put aside, and then
Yeah.
the real Canada should be stared in eye to eye, like right
Yes.
in the eye. The
Yes.
Canada really, really is, and I think that we can't, like, we just cannot put that entire veneer of Canada, which has been very demonstrably very racist and very, like colonial in its entire mindset. Like we can't.
Mindset is yeah, and yeah, because if you see Canada is also like the Native Americans, native people who used to live here, right?
Right.
A couple of centuries back, when these people migrated from mainly from the UK and other areas, they call them they just kill all those people, put them in caves. What happened in America with the Native American, but still Native American are still a major part in our American society, which we should also be proud of. That okay, yes, but in Canada, I don't think that there is anybody left as a Native American, as a Native Canadian, right? So
Yeah,
these,
like even if they like these guys, the natives who are living in entire North America, even if they are actually being like put as cute exhibits, like in residential, reservations and all those things. They're not. I mean, they are like they are exhibits really. Like
right,
they're not
right,
living their life with the entire freedoms as like other people are, and so I think we need to recognize that and then move on to say things the way they are, not
right,
as people like would like us to believe. So
Yeah,
having
I want to stop there. Or like the media want us to believe.
correct, correct.
The rogue media, the fake media, the government sponsored media, the liberal sponsored media, the leftist sponsored media, which have their own agendas.
Right.
They
Because
have nothing
like,
to
I
do with
think
the truth.
right, we just pretend as if everything has been okay, like it has not been.
Yes.
So let's not pretend things which are not there. Let us see things the way they are. Like maybe like most of the people right now who are there in North America are not racist and not colonial in their mentality. That I can understand. But I think what we really need to understand is that uh, we still like need to understand the background of this all and say that this is has been a reality. If this has
Yes.
been a reality, how do we make sense of what is happening now? And
Right.
then we'll get the right answers. But like
Yes.
if we pretend something and then start making up things, we'll never get the right answers. So
Exactly.
so now that we have understood that Canada in its beginning and the way it shaped up as late as the 2000s, when 1997 was almost the like start of the new century. The
Yes.
as late as starting of the new century, Canada was essentially a colonial and racist society where kids were being killed for assimilation. Now that we have
Yeah.
established that, let's move forward then.
Yeah. But you are saying 1997. I think we have to go back a decade prior, 1985, when the Kanishka happened.
Yeah. So let's start with the
Okay.
with the whole
Okay.
thing of like what really happened. Because
Yeah.
like Kanishka, like that was a major thing where see like people do not like fully realize what really happened there. At that time, these Khalistani terrorists who were being like given the entire freedom to run their entire movement or terror activities from Canada, actually that day did two terror attacks. One was that the IC-8 the Air India like attack that
Right.
finished. There was another one that happened at the Japanese airport where the porters were killed. Now there the timing of the bomb went off because the Khalistani terrorists did not really like understand or did not really factor in the daylight savings because there were no daylight savings in Japan the way they are in Canada. So their
Right.
timing went off and the bomb actually went off earlier. But that day, two bombs that went off in Air India flights.
Right.
And in this like flight, the Air India Tanishq, over 300 people were killed, mostly Canadian, British, and Indian citizens. Most of them were Indian origin,
Yes.
and they were
Yes.
killed.
Exactly.
So now let's like talk about that. So I think you wanted to talk about the Kanishk. Uh,
Yeah. So you know who did it, right? It's
right.
an yeah. It was what was his name? Parminder Singh. No, what was
Yeah,
his name?
Parmar. Talvinder Singh Parmar.
Parminder. Yeah. So Talvinder Singh Parmar, he was already uh responsible for killing two people in Punjab, right? And he was jailed. He was released on bail, and anyhow he managed to leave India and went to Canada. So my
Right.
question to you with the Canadian government is, what your system are doing? Don't you do the background check that he's a murderer there? And he was the one who was the founder of Babbar Khalsa, right? He
Correct.
was the one who founded that terror organization because he's a terrorist himself. So in the June of 1985, when all this happened, uh, 329 people on the board, they were killed. And where the bomb exploded at 31,000 feet high. And the bomb it is being said was carrying in the suitcase.
Correct.
So how this can happen that somebody put the bomb in the suitcase, they didn't do any surveillance, there was no checking in the suitcase, and the suitcase very well get into the aircraft. and it exploded on way to London, right? And the final destination was New Delhi.
Right. And the funny thing was that actually that flight took off from Vancouver. It came from Vancouver to Toronto, and from Toronto it was going to London and then to Delhi. So it was
Yes,
a long flight. So the bomb
yes,
was actually kept in Vancouver. So it not only came, like got into the plane in Vancouver, it went from Vancouver to Toronto, and then the bomb was actually transferred over to Toronto's plane, and it went on, and nobody checked because, uh, like actually, it came to Toronto.
yeah. So let
You
me
know,
tell you,
via Air India flight 181, and then it became 182 flight.
yeah, let me tell you what was the excuse the Canadian intelligence agency gave. They said, yes, we have the information, and it would have been prevented. That's I'm not saying it's the Washington Post. It's who said that. The Canadian intelligence agency has the information that could have prevented this Kanishka attack. And Canadian intelligence agency called CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Okay, excuse me. They have some information, some input that there is a threat of Sikh extremism. That's what the agency says. But when asked how you can do this, they said that there was some misunderstanding which happened between the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the spy agency CSIS. And when they said that after 15 years in 2010, can you imagine their professionalism, how they could have worked? Because before 9/11, this was the biggest terror attack in the history, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the way, that's the question which needs to be asked,
See,
that
the
they
thing was,
have no professionalism to, they have no work ethics, that okay, we have the inputs and you know that this the Indian Air India will be targeted. How many flights go from Air India to in Air India flights have gone from Canada to India at that time? Two, three, four at the maximum in a week, right?
right.
So you don't have that ethics, professional ethics to go and check, and then you said, "Oh, we are having dispute." What if it has been a Canadian Airlines or an American Airlines or a Russian Airlines? Would you be able to say that?
See, the thing is, we have to understand that, this. So it is not just that they had the information; they actually knew about it much earlier because they had intercepts of Parmar and all these guys who were talking about this. Not only that, Parmar actually had gone to the forest where he was testing the Rayat. Like I think, like his name was like Rayat. He was the bomb maker. He was the one who was later arrested. Now, this guy, Rayat, he was actually the one who was like Inderjeet Singh Rayat. So, this Inderjeet Singh was the one who, and they were testing the bomb. And the funny thing is that uh, their investigators, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the CSIS, intelligence people, had actually witnessed the bomb being tried off, like in that forest in British Columbia, and they knew what, and this was just 15 or 20 days before the actual bombing, and yet they did nothing.
Yeah. And
So,
then,
right. And then after that, all these people were let off for very flimsy, excuses. There was no evidence found for like for anyone. Inderjeet Singh Rayat was actually the only one who was arrested, but also let off after some years, right? Like he was like let go. Now the thing is that so if your intelligence knows one that these guys are planning a bombing, your intelligence has actually seen them trying that out. Your intelligence knows who are the people who are going to do it,
right,
and still you let it happen, and then your intelligence and the police and your entire law enforcement, administration does not even arrest them and lets them go. Then I think the question that we need to ask is, was Canadian establishment and intelligence
was
complicit?
behind this?
Complicit. Yes. was behind and complicit in this terrorist bombing itself? That is the
Yes.
question that one like needs to ask.
Do you have any doubts on that? When the Indian government asks that the mastermind Talvinder Singh Parmar should be brought back to India, what did the then Prime Minister, who was the father of Justin Trudeau, the Trudeau's Prime Minister, said? They refused to cooperate. He said, I refuse to extradite Mr. Talvinder Singh Parmar to India on the plea that India, though a member of the Commonwealth, did not recognize the sovereignty of the Queen, who was a Canadian sovereign. Is that the plea that right? It is so specious plea. It's so means this is a government to government uh work, right? So you are straining the government to government, the country to country relation just for one person whom your agency also know that he is behind the killing of 329 people on board.
Right. Because this guy Nijjar, he had been. I mean, Talvinder Singh Parmar was the one who was like there, and these guys, like you're saying, Pierre Trudeau, like he actually didn't hand over Parmar after he had like ran away to Canada after killing the police officers in India on exactly that plea that you guys do not have the Queen as your head of state, and that is why we cannot extradite our people to you. And the funny thing was, they were not even their people.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
whole thing, this whole, like, even Nijjers, this thing, like, it was so crazy that,
Yeah. Yeah, we
uh,
will talk on Nietzsche that how he
yeah,
tried to rename his name as Ravi Sharma, tried to enter, which was rejected, and all
right.
those. But I will tell you what happened even after 15 years
Hmm.
when finally after 15 years under the pressure from the Indian government and the change of the more reliable government which really had the brains and know how the diplomacy works, they set up a commission
Hmm.
to check why and how such a blunder can happen in 2000. And John Major, who was a lawyer in Calgary, was said, "Oh, I was not sure that it took place from Canada when it comes to him, and he retired from the Supreme Court of Canada at that time, so he was appointed at that time. Prime Minister Stephen Harper, right? He
Hmm.
appointed the Calgary lawyer John Major, and he said, okay, it was 15 years back. I didn't know. I heard of Kanishka, but I didn't know that it happened. The flight flew from Canada. Then you can see, with major blunder happened from the Canadian soil.
Right.
Even the common man, the lawyer, who is always on the top of every news, right? Because that's what his work is almost. He even
Right.
didn't know that the flight just get off from Canada, and it was the Canadian agency's fault. You can see what level they have given to this mishap which happened
Hmm. Hmm.
over the Atlantic. So now you can see it has no this shows their radical, their racist mindset, their
Hmm.
colonial mindset. Oh, okay, 329 people Indian died, doesn't matter. What if it has been white Canadians? It has been on top of every headline. And they have done the investigation and have brought the people to the justice within weeks.
Right.
So this, so I just want you to just resonate how the mindset of these Canadian media or the Canadian government or whatever. I am not saying that every Canadian is like that, but still they didn't. It was not the headline that okay, Kanishka bombing has happened and the plot for this bombing happened in a Canadian soil. So
Right.
it means that yes, Canada is a terrorist heaven. It's a heaven for terrorists, right? It should be put on a blacklist. Why not?
Yeah, actually,
FATF should take a stern action and put Canada on the blacklist, not the grey list.
right. And that Canada is a safe haven for all the terrorist organizations is not something that we are saying. In
Yes.
1998, the CSIS director himself testified before Canada's Senate that 50 terror organizations, including the world's most notorious, were present in Canada. In terms of terror groups, this made Canada number two in the world after the United States. And so, like in 2004, the CSIS report which came out, they also said very clearly that Irish Republican Army, the Tamil Tigers, and the major Sikh terrorist groups have supporters there. Now, like this one thing I want to bring here, and we can move on to like Niger and all that. But I think there is one thing that I wanted to clearly say here. So in 2018, I think it was like 2018 April. There were two guys, Bhagat Singh Barar and Parvakar Singh Dulai. These two guys were like in April. Barar went to the airport and he was on the no-fly list. And then Dulai went in May and he was his business partner of Barar, and he was also on the no-fly list. But why were they in the no-fly list? They were in the no-fly list because, according to the Canadian authorities, they were involved in promoting extremism, including radicalization of youth, with the aim of achieving Khalistan independence and attack planning and facilitation, including weapons procurement to conduct attacks in India. This happened with these two guys in 2018.
Okay.
Now, now this guy, Brar, was actually, so Dalai was is a friend of Jagmeet Singh.
Colonial.
Brar was actually an associate of Nijjar himself. Brar was
Oh,
also the son of Lakhbir Singh Rode, who is the nephew of Bhindranwala. So these guys, these two guys were on no-fly list. That we know. What also came out like in the recent last few weeks was not just these two guys, but even Niger was on the no-fly list
no
in
fly
Canada
zone. Yes.
in 2017 and 18, and then the no-fly list of US in 2019. So you tell me, if Brar and Dulai were on the no-fly list for extremism and violent attacks and weapons procurement to conduct attacks in India, then what was the reason to put Niger on that no-fly list? Was it for freedom
Exactly.
of speech?
Yeah. For what?
He was
Means
also doing the same thing. And
same
not
thing.
only Canada, but also US put him on the no-fly list. So this is a question that needs to be asked. How is it that extremism and violent attacks on India at that time in 2017, 2018 suddenly became freedom of speech into
Right.
like 2023? That
Yeah.
just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Because
Either
I can give you the answer of that.
either
Because
you were foolish then or you're foolish now. So
yeah.
you need to like find out what you're doing.
Yeah. I can give the answer because on the 25th anniversary of the Kanishka bombing, they called Air India Flight 182 a Canadian tragedy.
Mhm.
After 25 years,
Mhm.
they agreed. Yes, it's a Canadian tragedy.
Right.
And the lawyer who headed that, let me give you just, I will take 30 more seconds. Some of the excerpts from the Hindustan Times. They
Mhm.
said the Canadian response immediately after the bomb was very mediocre.
Mhm.
The government practically did nothing except sending two or three very low level bureaucrats. I repeat, two or three very low level bureaucrats to Limerick, where they happens, and then they were collecting all
Right.
those, they collected the black box and all those.
Mhm.
And he further stated that I think it is worthwhile for the people who suffered loss, at least show them the government, the Canadian, cared about what happened to other Canadians. It was trying. So the journalist said, "Oh, you are just trying to repair the damage many years after the event." So after 25 years, You are
Mm.
saying, oh yes, we apologize. This happened. This should not have happened. This happened in 1985, 2010. The kids who have lost their parents, or somebody who has lost, maybe they are no more in this world, right? A person who is, let's say, 60, 65-year age, after 25, maybe he may not be in the world. And
Right.
now you are apologizing. What that apology actually means? Does it make any sense? Absolutely not.
Right.
Can they do the same thing in 9/11? Can they do the same thing when the tubes things happened in 2005? Can they do the same thing in the French bombing? Can they do the same thing in Chechnya? Can they do the same thing if anything happened like when the attacks happens in California? The Pakistan guy who hijacked the Jewish center?
Right.
No, no, the immediate response come within seconds. Can now they say the same thing in the Israel conflict with Hamas, which is
Right.
going right now? No. What it
See.
shows,
Right.
Deshi, their mentality,
Yeah.
their racist attitude, their colonial attitude.
Right. So I
That
think, like in this one, right, like even Niger's death when he was being, like he was killed, like they are putting all that, and this guy Trudeau had said that in the parliament and all those things, and then said he had credible allegations.
evidence, not
Yeah,
allegation, evidence.
he said he had credible allegations, not even like evidence. He didn't even have evidence. He said
Yeah,
we have credible allegations. Either it's allegation or it's credible. Like it can't be both. But that is how it, like he went. Now, if he went with that,
maybe he was high on dope. I
right?
don't believe him because you know that.
I know. Thing is that the truth is that this guy, like Niger, was the one who had actually ordered the killing of Ripudaman Singh Malik. Ripudaman Singh Malik was the guy who was actually one of the accused in the Kanish bombing. The reason was because they were actually inter-gang rivalry that was going on, and ISI, which had backed Ripudaman Singh all the way at that time for Khalistan, were getting tired of him. So they were actually quote unquote cleaning house, and that's how they always do because like ISI did the same thing in Afghanistan when they actually brought in Taliban to get rid of or like sideline Hikmat Yar because they were not
Right.
happy with Hikmat Yar. So for ISI, like Niger was a new guy, and Ripudaman Singh was like should have been eliminated, and that's what they did. Niger actually eliminated, Ripudaman Singh Malik. Now it is very very possible, and I think that's how it is that there is like very similar. People are saying that the way Ripudaman Singh was killed and the way Niger was killed, like that
It's
shooting,
almost the same.
it is almost the same.
Same.
And they're
Yeah.
saying that who actually did that? It could be ISI sponsored person because
Yeah.
the modus operandi is very much the same, or it could be an inter-gang rivalry, which is exactly what is happening these days.
Yeah.
So the
If you
question that
see,
we
it's
should
a.
ask
It,
is like
Mhm.
how can they really say that it is India when all the evidence points to something else?
Yeah.
Point
And
an
see, and
inter-gang
it.
rivalry at best. Worse, it is an ISI attack.
Yeah. See, it's an open secret. ISI has been neutralizing the people who speak against them, whether they were from the Baluch, whether they were from the Sindh, whether they were from Punjab, whether anybody, right? Whom
Right.
they think, oh, it can be a threat in future. Even leave the people. They have prosecuted their own leaders. Prime Minister Ziaul Haq has what he has done to Bhutto, right? What Ayub Khan has done to the first Prime Minister.
Right.
It's an open secret, and no more a secret now. It's an open history that
Right.
what they are famous for. They are not famous for protecting their borders. They are famous for persecution of their own people. That's why
Right.
Pakistan is called an army with a country, not a country with an army, because army decides who will live, who will
Right.
not live, and how many journalists they have killed. I am forgetting the name. Just recently, one more journalist was killed in Europe, right? Because
Right.
he speaks against ISI a lot. That
Right.
was the same question the opposition party, the Conservative Party leader, Perry, right, who is
Mm.
in the Canadian opposition, he also said, "Okay, Mr. Prime Minister, you need to come clean. We need to know evidence. You
Right.
just can't stand in the parliament. You are a prime minister of Canada. You are not a like a union leader standing in front in any of the ground or in any of the park and say, okay, we will do this, we will do that. No, right? You are the prime minister representing the country, our country to 195 other countries.
Right.
So what you say carries weight.
Right.
He sometimes he I think because it's an open now that when they came in India to attend in September 8 and 9 the G20 summit, the sniffer dogs ran towards his aeroplane and the narcotic union the narcotic police of India, they found drugs, cocaine,
Mm.
almost a kilo. I think more, it was more than half a kilo, and below it was a huge amount. So who
Mm.
was using that? Is that you, Prime Minister Trudeau? Or the son, Xavier, who accompanied you? He's just 16-year-old kid, but who knows? Like father, like son. You are also doing the same like what your father did, right? We can't extradite the terrorists to India. And you also are patronizing the terrorism exports to other countries from your country. And maybe your son is also have the same genes as you, will also be using the same drugs as you are
Mm.
using, right?
Yeah, and I think like they are getting uppity, but about the allegations that were made about the drugs and all that. But the thing is that it needs to be seriously like investigated by Canada itself about what their
Yes,
prime minister is really doing. See, the thing is, they can like in their media, like they can run down Indians and Indian government and all that, and Modi ji and whoever they want. But the fact is that their government, their establishment, their intelligence has a track record of actually backing terrorism and backing, violence against its own people. Because, like, remember, Kanish, like bombing, actually killed over 250 Canadian citizens who were of
yeah,
Indian origin, but they were Canadian citizens.
yeah.
And
But also, if you see that, not
right,
only this, what he has done between the truckers, they were when last year it happens, right? The trucker was just protesting very peacefully in Ottawa, and what he did, he put an emergency like his father did, take away the bank balances, frozen their bank balances, put them in jails. And how you can say that you are not the Hitler of Canada? How you can say that you are
see,
not the Saddam Hussein of
not
Canada?
truckers, but also any. So even if somebody had created a GoFund campaign to help the truckers,
Yeah, he is
they,
also
and
prosecuted.
anybody else who was funding, like putting even $1 in the GoFund campaign, even their banks were frozen, bank accounts.
Yes,
It was
that's
so
that.
bad.
Yeah, and then he gave a big lecture to the Indian government when the farmer protest was happening.
Right.
Remember that?
See, this government, I mean,
I,
like, Trudeau's
I
government
think,
is
yeah,
basically a fascist government. Like that is very
yes,
clear. And then it comes from, like you were saying, from Pierre Trudeau, like because he himself was a fascist guy. But the
yeah.
funny thing is, like what I find incredible is how the Canadian establishment and intelligence has been backing these guys up. There was a very interesting report that came
Because
out.
they are being controlled. That's what I'm saying. There is no free media. It's controlled by the government in Canada. There are no free agencies. They are all controlled by by the government of Canada. That's what
Right.
is happening. Even I was reading, there was one guy, I forgot his name. He very well mentioned that Mr. Trudeau, you have done enough for the Canada. Now it's time you should step down.
Yeah.
Okay. So there have been voices within the Canada also. Did you saw
Now,
that clip yesterday? It was so fair. It was so viral on the in the social media when he shake hand with one of his own citizens. He said, "I don't want to shake hand with you. We
Yeah,
don't have the food, we don't have the houses. What you have done? He said, what I have done? He said, yes, you are the prime minister. You are responsible for what we are
right,
suffering.
right. And see, this, like in the run up to Niger's killing, what really happened was that this was reported by like not just the Indian media, this was reported also by New York Times, that Niger's son had shared, and like this, New York Times actually confirmed this. Then Canadian officials from the Canadian services and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service (CSIS) were actually having meetings with Niger on a weekly basis and
Yeah.
trying to warn him about professional assassins who are out there to kill him. Now, the
Yes.
question that needs to be asked is, why is intelligence so hell-bent on actually supporting and safeguarding a known terrorist, a person who their own government had put on a no-fly list, and US as well, because he was a threat to the country and the security of the society itself.
Yeah,
So I
and
think,
also see, I was talking with one of my friend. I don't want to disclose his name. He's a Canadian guy. He said that, oh, Trudeau is very rich because your Prime Minister Modi conveyed very strong concern about the continuing anti-India activities of Sikh terrorism elements in Canada, and he said that there has been inciting violence against Indian diplomats. It's damaging Indian diplomatic premises. They are threatening their families, and even the Indian diaspora in Canada is very fearful to go and worship in their temples. The temple has been vandalized, and blah blah blah. I said, my friend, is there any false evidence? Is there any false thing in that? It's all true.
yeah,
We have the evidence. We are not giving that evidence. It's not America or India who is going and clicking the pictures and making video. It's you people who are making the video and putting on social media. And through you people, we came to know. We live thousands of miles away from what happened in Vancouver or what happened in Toronto. We live thousands of miles away. We didn't know what's happening in your country. It's you
right.
people who give us the information. And because of social media, the best point is as soon as if something happened at 9 o'clock, people came to board by 9:05. We don't have to wait for the next day newspaper to come or the news to travel all the way to our news channel. No, now in the social media, what happened is an instant.
The thing is, these Khalistanis are not just sitting quietly. I mean, they actually put up banners and all those things very, very clearly, like about threatening the diplomats and all that.
Yeah.
And like when you start doing that, then you are actually like contravening some of the main things about policies that need to happen to safeguard the diplomats at least of the other countries. And that has been the problem, and these guys, the Canadian establishment has actually been trying to cover up for Niger. So, like,
Yes.
I don't know, like, if you remember, they're actually Minister of, Citizenship and Immigration, uh, Mark Miller, like, he had said, like, when there was this thing about whether Niger was a Canadian citizen or not, he came up on Twitter and on the first day, on September 19th, he actually came and said, well, Niger became a Canadian citizen on March 3, 2015. And like apparently later on, he like would have learned that India had issued a red corner notice against
Yeah.
Niger in November of 2014. And
Yes.
so
How
he
is it
came the
allowed
next
him
day.
to become a
Yeah,
citizen?
but he came the next day and said, "Oh, like he probably backdated his like entire citizenship." And he said, "Oh, like I made a mistake. It was actually May of 25th, like May 25th of 2007." And the reason why he would have done it is because actually this guy was convicted of bombing a cinema hall in Ludhiana in an
Yes.
area which was a Muslim dominated area. Six people died, 42 got injured, and he was a co-conspirator and he ran away from India to Canada. So he was trying to save him. So the thing is, normal people when they come to Canada or US, they have to give police verification. This guy
Not only the
bombed,
police
bombed,
verification, Deshji,
he
we
bombed.
have to.
Yeah, I know.
Mhm.
He had to do it. bombs
Yeah.
and kills like people, 6 people, comes to Canada and gets the citizenship within like matter. Actually, like even before that, like
He
I
he
don't know
changed
how.
his name. I don't know if you know this story. He changed his name to Ravi Sharma. Then they came to know that no, this is not Ravi Sharma. It's a fictitious name. They
Right,
rejected. Then he married somebody, a Canadian woman, I think, and then he said, "Okay, now you are." Then also a lot of things happened. And you, Mr. Prime Minister, you snubby, stupid guy, you didn't know whom you are saving up. You are saving a people. You are saving a person who has a history of lies, history of murder, history of radical ideas, radical views. You are saving that person who himself is the foundation of one of the terrorist organization. He was the
right,
founder of terrorist organization. I think Khalistan Liberation Force or something like that. He was the co-founder. He was the founder of that.
right.
So you are so the question to the West is that I am not saying Canada, but the whole West, which says, okay, we are the protector of the whole world, right? Where your ideology of protecting the democracy, where your ideology of protecting the whole world comes, when you are exporting the people from your country and having all the terrorist activity very much happening in your place, in your soil, and you take no action.
Correct.
Instead of instead of if Mr. Trudeau saying this that it's India hand, I think when Mr. Modi has told him, he said, "Sir, see, Niger is already gone because he was a terrorist. He was a terrorist. We are taking action."
Mm.
Instead of saying, "Oh, Mr. Modi just lamented," that's why he said they were, I think it was a Toronto Chronicle or where it says this way when the Prime Minister Modi was saying this, oh, this way you have to live, right? And see the embarrassment. He was in the hotel when his drug cartel, which he ran, I think he ran the drug cartel in Canada. So when the head of the drug cartel was in hotel, and everything was, and nobody in Indian ministry even call him or send an email. Do you want to have something? Because everybody knows you are the head of drug cartel. You are the head of a terrorist organization. You are the one who heads the terrorist organization.
Right.
Right under your nose, everything is happening, and still you are protecting them. It means you are responsible. You are not responsible. You are heading the drug cartels in Canada. You are heading the arms cartel in Canada. How could these people get arms? And that you highly sophisticated.
See, all these, like you're very right. Like these Khalistani, groups are not just terrorist organization targeting India and Hindus, which they are, because they are saying very clearly about death to Hindus and all those things. That's one thing. But they are actually drug cartels themselves, and not just
Yeah.
that, they are into human trafficking of women
Yes.
and kids and people. And like, like everybody knows very clearly about how they bring people over into Canada, and then they use them as cannon fodder for their own movement, quote unquote movement, but basically terror, activities. So that's what they do. And the thing is, all this, hogwash about rule of law and all those things is nonsense, because this entire rule of law came from the British, the entire like law, like backup, right? But the
Yes.
British law,
Yes.
British
Yes.
and Commonwealth law was perfected during the colonial times.
Yeah. Yes.
The rule of law is actually a product of colonialism, right? So if that is true, then it is tainted by colonialism. How can you bring out something that is so great from some during a time where the entire structure was to subjugate and kill other people? So
Right.
basically, the rule by law of the colonial times morphed into rule of law.
Yes.
Basically, they were the ones who decided that we are the ones who will give certificate to ourselves and then use this rule of law and
For
actually
others.
sidestep it when we want. and
Yeah.
enforce when we like want it.
When we don't want. Yeah.
Yeah, and like according to our own convenience, because like in the same vein, like when like Parmar actually has to be extradited, like it's a different thing. When the Kanish bombing happens, it's a different rule of law. But when this like something happens in like India for farm laws, it's a different like law at that time. Then it is freedom of speech. To kill
Yes.
Indians, Hindus, and the Indian diplomats, it's a different freedom of speech. But
Yes.
when the truckers come out and say something, it's a different freedom of speech.
Yes.
The thing
So
is, the
whenever they
rule of
want,
law is bullshit. Like it has to be like you can't keep fooling the world with this great house sounding like words of rule of law, freedom of speech when they actually mean nothing.
exactly. That's what. If we say it's just like the dad. If we say sun is a moon, you agree. Sun is a moon. When we say moon is a sun, you agree. Moon is a sun. Right.
Hmm.
It doesn't. We are not imbecile. The world is not imbecile. How
Right,
long you can make the people fool?
right,
Right. You have to go back to the vintage and then look what the world says, because time is gone. Neither you are a part of, neither G7 is the biggest economy left in the world. Okay. Neither you people are the champions of democracy. We have seen how the people have been racially discriminated in Canada, right?
right,
And the history speaks that. We are not speaking that. We were not even born when you had done all those crap with the people over there.
right. So I
So,
think,
and
yeah,
yeah, and the Indian, I just want to tell you one thing. They were saying, okay, when India said, okay, shut up this guy and get it out of our country, right? The diplomat. And you see the way he bombarded that ANI person. He may have been hit. That's what the moral values and ethics you have, how to treat a person. That shows that what you are. You even don't
right,
have the manners and the etiquette to talk with a media person.
right,
I'm not saying that. Your action speaks. Action speaks louder than the words. And your
right.
action speaks that. And then you have so much disparity between the Indian and the US, sorry, Indian and the Canadian. Why? It should be equal. And what will happen if by any chance, God forbid, we are not going to do that because we are not stupid as the Canadian government. What will happen? They should have the Canadian government think we are 1.4 billion people. If let's say 100,000 just go and bombard the Canadian consulates or the embassies, what the heck they can do? Had they ever thought of it? Canada has not. Canada is just a minuscule. What is Canada? Just when with America, they have the population. The rest is jungle. The rest is snow mountains. The rest is nothing. People don't reside there.
See, the thing is, I mean, I mean, like obviously the Indians and Hindus are never into all these things, and they will never will
Yeah.
be. And
Because
but
we
the
are
thing
not
is,
taught like that, right? We were taught
right,
Vasudev Kutumbakam. We can taught
right,
Athithi Devo Bhava, right? We were
right,
taught that people who comes to us, we should treat them even if we don't have the food. We give them, and that's examples. What happened during the this when the floods were there in Pakistan, right, in the Sindh province. So what do? We send hundreds and thousands of trucks of rice, food, article, shelters, tents, blankets to them, even though they are arch tribal and they are perpetrating terrorism in India from the last 3 decades. But
right.
okay,
Like,
they
but I think what will start happening is that these kind of the countries like Canada, which are small but they kind of punch like way over their weight. See, the thing is, like some people are talking about, well, what happens to trade with India? With trade with India, they have just 4 billion export and 4 billion imports, basically $8 billion. The trade to Nigeria is like
are
I
much higher.
80 billion or something like that, even
Yeah,
more than
it's
that.
much higher, much
So
higher.
So nothing will happen. Like India will open up a new, trade relationship with somebody in Africa or South America, which will be more than Canada's any day. The thing
Oh,
is, that Canada has to really think.
Canada is just a $1
The
trillion
Canada
dollar
does not have
economy.
any options out there because either you go for China or you go for India in terms of the large trading partner. China is slowly and slowly eating away with most of these societies and countries and trades. What will happen going forward is that Canada will be boxed, and this time, this government that we have in India right now is not forgiving at all. Like they are just going ahead because it's enough, and
Yes, it's enough,
people
is
in
enough.
India are saying enough is enough now.
Yes.
It's
You
enough.
keep on bashing us for no reason. Just because you are a white skin, you don't have the
No,
supremacy
no. See,
anyway.
backing is one thing, but the thing is, you are overtly and openly creating terrorist organizations and terrorist
Yes,
infrastructure to kill Indians in India. Six
yes.
Indians were killed, and you gave him citizenship.
Yes, and moreover that, not only this, moreover that, can you let me tell you the Toronto government, the Toronto, their education system is so bad. They are under what you call they don't have the money. They're underfunded. They don't
Right,
have the enough money. They are underfunded, and about 65,000 crores, which is approximately equal to 8 to 10 billion dollars, Indian students bring to the Toronto education system. And this is the reason the Toronto education system is surviving. Okay, boss, you don't give the visa, and your universities are not top class by anywhere. I have seen how the Canadian student have the caliber. No offense to hear anybody, but stop giving the visas and sink yourself in a bigger depression.
right.
Your economy will fall in the next 10 years from $1 trillion. I can give it writing maybe to 800 or 700 billion dollars. Because what you have, you only have the small education system and Indian diaspora. The Indian student last year around more than 250,000 students came. This year they were expecting about 300,000, more than 325,000. They are saying almost 41% increment from the last year, which brings humongous amount to the Canadian economy so
Right,
that you can survive your Canadian education system, you can survive giving the base to the professors, you can survive the laboratory expenses, you can survive the education system of your Canadian citizen because your Indian student pay almost 3 times the fees as a Canadian citizen, as a
right.
student. So it means one Indian student is helping 3 Canadian students
Hmm.
to study there.
Right.
So you don't have the luxury to dictate us, okay, we will do this, we will do that. Go ahead, sir. Who is stopping you to do that?
Yeah, I think, see, the thing is, sanity will have to come into this whole thing because, like, if you, you can't be treating other people in a, this manner and then expecting that they will still be, like,
Very
helping you
good to you, nice to you.
and be like making you prosper because it never works.
Yeah,
And
I think Indian government should raise this concern with FATF saying that Canada should be blacklisted.
right. And Canada has been a safe haven. Like we are not saying it.
Yeah,
The
Canada
US
has a
Senate,
safe haven.
the US
Khalistan Babbar Khalsa, all those nonsense crap terrorist organization, they are flourishing like nothing in Canada, right?
right. So I think like it's been quite a long discussion.
Yeah,
And so maybe I think in the end we can kind of summarize this whole thing that we started off with the history saying that how Canada as a society has been a colonial and racist society. Like
yeah,
whatever
mindset is really good.
there had been or the media has been portrayed, reporting it. And then we looked at how, like in the history, how they have actually, treated the natives there. And then, how this whole Khalistan thing came about and the entire history of that. and how these guys, the intelligence and their establishment has been backing that up in a way to attack India. Because
Yeah.
that's exactly what they're doing. They're
Yeah,
attacking
they're perpetuating a
these guys
lot
are
of
backing.
terror organizations.
So
Yes, they
I
are.
think the question that we ask, and I think it's a natural question that everybody should be asking is, given all this evidence of how Canada and Canadian establishment backs these killers and these terrorists up, the question is Canada itself complicit in attacks on Indians and Indian citizens in India? Because that is how it seems like. So I think like somebody in Canada needs to start thinking about where is that country headed. And I think your question about like should it be pushed like towards the FATF, the FATF, I think that's a very relevant question because
Yes,
that like these guys are actually a safe haven for terrorists is something that now the Indian government is also saying very clearly. You know, the Ministry of External Affairs like has said that they are a safe haven for terrorists, for extremists, and for organized crime. And I think
yes.
that the next step is that they are complicit of using non-state actors to target India and Indians. Like I think
And
that's
Indians,
the real thing.
yeah, and they want to break the Bharat into different pieces so that it will never rise above like what it was 200 years back
Right.
because of their colonial mindset. And if East has ruled the world for 2000 years, they don't want that to happen for the next 2000 years.
Right.
And
So
I will be honest to say this on your forum that they themselves are really scared to death that how can whatever uh, the castles they have built in the last 70 to 100 years, how those castles can be burned down because and they will play all those nonsense crap, the gutter politics and in the under the big umbrella of democracy. But in fact, they are the real dictators of the 21st century.
right. And
Trudeau is not a democratic government. It's a dictator government where the Canadians don't have the right to speak. Their banks are frozen, their accounts are frozen, they are put in the jail. And where is the freedom of speech? And Canada is the heaven of the terrorist organization. And there is perpetuating terrorism not only in India, who knows all over the world.
right. I mean, if they are
Who's
actually
not a part of
using
agency intelligence?
Pakistani ISI, which
Yep.
was doing all this, then I think like they are basically hand in glove with a lot of terrorist activity that goes around the world because Khalistanis are not acting alone. They're acting along with the ISI and the other terrorist organizations, and we all know
Yeah.
that.
And
So
ISI openly said it. They have a policy, bleed India with 1,000 cuts after 1971, and that's what they are doing. First, they tried terrorism in Punjab, when they failed very miserably, then they try to put in Kashmir. Now they have failed in Kashmir. So what they are doing is, okay, let's have this outside India because in India we are not able to, we are not successful.
right,
You know,
because
they just
like we have yet not talked about the Islamist, terrorism that goes on, and like everybody knows, like some years back, Tafshin Malik was caught, and Tafshin Malik, was related to the Al Huda Foundation, like
yeah.
within Toronto itself,
Yeah,
and
I am against terrorist organization. Like what's going in Israel, it boils my blood. This is
right.
wrong.
Right.
This is
And I
wrong.
think like we'll like talk like I think one of these days we'll discuss about that side of the terrorism also that goes on within Canada, and Canada actually does not either pay attention or is complicit again the same way as it is complicit with Khalistanis. So I think
Yeah.
like for today, I think like we have really touched a very big canvas, and
Yeah.
like I hope like what we discussed was informative because our aim is not to actually indict anyone or say like people are bad and all those things. It is just
Canadian people are people like us. Only it's the administration or the few people in the government which make the whole country uh, portrait as a bad in the world,
yeah,
right?
because we have to look at things the way they are because like as Trudeau keeps on saying, it's freedom of speech. If there is freedom of speech, then I
What
think the
happened to
freedom of
truckers?
speech will be very, very clear. So, so with that, I think like we can end today's this thing. Mr. Ankush Bhandari is a geopolitical expert, so he has co-written a book, Geopolitics Redefined. I'll put a link to that book, like in the description. I'll also put a link to Drishtikon newsletter, drishtikon.com, and there was a very detailed article on this entire Canadian situation, so you can read that as well, and I'll add that there. And please do subscribe to the newsletter. Also, buy Ankush's book, for which I'll put the link. And please do comment and share your thoughts about how we are doing and what we are sharing. Is that informative
Right.
or not? So
Right.
thank you,
Okay.
Ankushi. Like, it was very
Thank
great.
you so much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Bye. Namaste.